Today is Wednesday, June 12th, 2024. This is the Arlington County Board of Equalization hearing. We have 6 cases on the agenda today, and for the record, there are 5 members present, so there is a quorum. The first case is RTC 250000503G at 2599 Columbia Pike. And Mr. Mangold or Mr. Aarons, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property. Can you turn your microphone on, sir? Can't hear you.
Aaron, do you have a microphone on?
How about now?
There you go. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Sorry about that. Apologize. Good morning, and thank you for hearing our case this morning. I'll relatively quickly go through the subject property, and then we can get into the details of the condition of the property and its valuation as of January 1, 2024. To cut to the chase, and then we can go back, the county has valued this as a development site based on approvals that existed as of 1/1/24. Those approvals as of that date are worthless because the project could not be built as approved, and those approvals have subsequently been terminated at the request of the property owner, which is now back to square one with regard to getting approvals to develop the site. To go back to the beginning, the subject property is comprised of 3 parcels on the north side of Columbia Pike, just east of Walter Reed Drive. It's 35,000 square feet of retail space. The only tenant currently at the site is a CVS. The property had been approved for a relatively significant mixed-use development. The approvals were for the specific development of the specific construction, specific tenancy of the property. No other uses of the site were permitted. Basically, the site is frozen in its existing condition and for the existing uses. The project had been approved contemplating a first floor retail grocer tenant that was the linchpin for the viability of the development of the site. Without that specific ground floor tenant, the project cannot be constructed. When that tenant backed out, the owner was forced to pursue termination of the specific approvals that exist at the property and essentially have to start over. The current condition of the site is that the improvements will require massive renovation costs to try and re-tenant the site. I'm sure you all are familiar with the property. And today it's an existing non-conforming site. But its current use is all it can be used for today. Harold, could you explain to the board, please, why the termination of the one tenant killed the entire project?
Yeah, so our grocer, and we have an NDA agreement, so I can't even really say its name, even though you guys all know who it is. Demanded, well, we were excited to have the grocer come to our building, and then the grocer essentially demanded that the building was built, that box was being built, a huge 40,000 square foot store specifically for them, with specific parking, with specific signage, with specific things that nobody else can really use, because not even other grocers want boxes like this. And it essentially also made the building too expensive. And by the time the economy took a turn, the interest rates went up and everything. Even back in 2022, when we vacated all the tenants except the CVS, and we did so because the CVS was going to have a temporary construction trail on site and move back into the new building. So we had the commercial space completely rented out. And we had to unwind these agreements when the grocer told us in December of 2022 that they will no longer move in. And they basically said, you're in violation of our terms because you haven't started building yet. Hence, we're not dealing with you. We're just terminating. We're not in violation of that. So we had a long battle with them. We fought with them. We finally settled with them in the summer, late July of 2023. And after that, we had to then terminate the agreement for CVS to move into the building. That happened in about October 2023, when we were able to secure them for another 2 years in the existing building and terminate the old agreement. Then we had to terminate our joint venture agreement with our developer, before which we could do absolutely nothing to unwind the encumbrance on the property, because we owned the property, not the joint venture, but the joint venture dictated what we can do with it. So we finally settled with the joint venture developer, Insight Property Group, at the end of 2023, after which I immediately went to the county to try to undo the special use permit, for the very reason that I knew that we couldn't afford the tax assessment that we would be burdened with that new special use, while that building is unbuildable without major plan revisions, and major plan revisions take up to 2 years to go back through the county to make the building a more usable building with, call it 250 to 80 apartments with maybe 15,000 of commercial space on the bottom, or whatever would be allowed at that point. Sadly, the ownership, who has owned this property since the 50s and owns the apartments, the market rate affordable apartments next door, we simply ran out of money. We don't have any money anymore. We spent all this money in this pre-development process, and we're broke. So the process of going back to the county to redevelop is going to be very difficult. We have been working and interviewing potential buyers, potential joint venture people. We are trying to re-tenant some of the space, and we've talked to CPP. They're interested in moving in, possibly with the Black History Museum. We don't know if that's going to happen. To top it all off, unfortunately, the property was burglarized of the rooftop HVAC equipment about 2 weeks ago, which there's a police report for, and one of the spaces has soil contamination under the building, which was found out after during the development process, that costs at least $1 million, we're told, to clean up. So there are just a lot of issues, a lot of challenges, and my appeal to the taxes to approximately $4 million, which I sent to you all as a request, was based on our sole income of the CVS, which we can't really do anything else with right now, and we hope the CVS stays until we have better plans.
All right, thank you. Ms. Kim, for the committee, please.
Thank you, board members, and Harold and Matthew, for being here this morning. I appreciate your time. So essentially, as you know, we valued this property as of January 1 as a site plan, and this is how we treat all properties that are under a site plan. And once again, January 1, 2024, there was a site plan in place for this particular property. And that's why we valued it came in at the value of the $17,674,800 based on its mixed, the potential mixed use of the grocer and the apartment units. Now we did hear as of May 2024 that the county board approved terminating the permit for this property. Now, obviously, this is something that we are going to take into consideration for next year, January 1, 2025, when we revalue the property. However, we did take a look at, we did, after hearing about this, we did our due diligence. So we reviewed the current land for the C2 zoning, what it was back in 2022 before they got this approval, and looked at the current land rates for that zoning. And the current land rates in this area for that zoning is $71.59 a square foot. Also, I did a test of the income approach, and that's based without the entitlements, okay? And when I finished, it came out at a value using retail guidelines for 9% vacancy and the 7.3% cap rate, and using expenses similar to what they reported for 2023. That value tested in at $7,744,700. Now, based on those current land rates that I gave you, $71.59, the land, just the land value alone, came in at that's wrong, $7,523,600. So, however, that's without the entitlements. Once again, we treat this just like we do any other site plan. How does the property stand as of January 1, 2024? And that's with the approved site plan. And our current value is, once again, $17,674,800. I am open for questions. Thank you.
If I can just add, apologize, board members. We just wanted to reiterate as well that we appreciate the hardships that are being experienced by the owners. At the same point, the board members have heard the last couple of years, other property owners also have hardships going on in this commercial environment. That is not something we're able to take into account as far as discounts for hardship or losing tenants in place, partnerships, etc. We literally heard about this yesterday. Two of our site plans, special exceptions that we heard. The commercial industry can be volatile in regards to getting development approved, but at the same point, we do recommend that you verify and confirm this assessment in the same equitable manner that all other special exceptions are approved and confirmed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from board members? Mr. Yates.
Lori, you went over the numbers real quick with the land and the building and what's there without the approvals. What was the total? You did them separately? The two combined?
For the land?
The land, what's there? Not
Okay.
without the
I'll give you the land. So basically the lot size is 105,093 square feet times the current land rate of $71.59. That came out to $7,523,600 rounded. Okay. When I did the test for the income, that came out to using $20 a square foot. So based on their NLA, using their NLA that they quoted, which was 35,300 square feet. Okay, and using the 9% stabilized vacancy guidelines for retail, the EGI came out to 642,460. And then I used 12% for the expenses, which is more than what they were reporting for the last 4 years. The 12% came out to $77,095. So it came in with an NOI of $565,365. And then using the retail cap rate of 7.3, came in at a final value of $7,744,700. It's about $200,000 more than the land without entitlements. All of that's based on without entitlements.
Okay. Mr. Mendez.
For the county, at what point would this project stop being valued as a site plan?
When we do our reassessment for January 1, 2025.
Is that after the use permit expires, or is there like a certain cutoff or a hard
Well,
stop?
so initially, the use permit was supposed to expire in February of 2025, okay? And let's say nothing happened. That's February 2025. So obviously, January 1, 2025, we still would have valued it on site plan, okay? Because February is after January 1. But now, because they went before the county board and they got the approval to terminate, and that was as of May 2024, because they got the approval to terminate this special use permit, we now, for January 1, 2025, we will not value it on site plan.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
But right now that stands
Thank you.
because of January 1.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Metzger.
I unrelated questions. First of all, January 1st, 2020, this is for the department, January 1st, 2023 and January 1st, 2024. Was there any change in their site, any approved change in site plan or the county's, the department's valuation of land and FAR foot and so forth? Anywhere? I can, and let me give you the bottom line and maybe you can back into it. It's a 95% increase from last year in the valuation of this property. So I'm going to give you wide latitude. How does it end up when it appears nothing's changed to have such a huge increase? What's changed? What constituent has changed?
Okay, so I am going to ask Chris to step on, to unmute. So basically, before it was approved, you know, we were valuing it on the C2 zoning, valuing it on the income approach. And then I believe last year we had noted that there was a site plan. And so I believe we made that correction. So that's where the value increased substantially. And then for this year, the value is based on the site plan.
Lori, you're telling me you didn't, as of last year's assessment, you didn't know that there was an approved site plan? And
You
so
know what, you're gonna have to give me a minute so I can give you the correct information. If you could.
Mr. Metzger, that is correct. The site plan was in effect prior to the January 1, 2023 valuation. Unfortunately, inadvertently, it was valued as an income producing property. We noted that during the review of that property, made mention to Ms. Roskin to make sure that that was going to be valued as of the approved site plan, which should have been done prior to that year.
Okay,
We did change that for January 1,
answers my
2024.
Question answered.
thanks a lot.
Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, for the owner, when did the grocery store bail?
Did you say when did the grocery store bail?
Yeah, when did they leave?
They terminated with us via email. The first notice we got was in December 2022.
And it was finalized in July.
And then it took till, August 2023 to negotiate or fight or argue with them to figure out how they can legally terminate this agreement. And quite frankly, we would have taken them to court, but they're the big gorilla that we could not afford to fight in court. So we just had to roll over, essentially.
Okay. All right, other questions? Okay, Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, this is for the county. This is a site plan, but you have underlying by right zoning. And whenever an owner gets a site plan for RA 818, C2, C3, any of these zoning categories, you're free to ignore the site plan and develop under the underlying by right zoning. Don't you take that into account at all in valuing this property?
I'll defer to Chris.
No, Mr. Lawson, we do not. Again, we treat all special exceptions that are approved by the county board the same way. So the density that's approved, the entitlements, if you will, are what's being valued vis-a-vis the land rates that are in effect as of January 1st that year.
Any final questions, board members? Okay, Ms. Roskin, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Sure. Once again, this property was valued as if it was a site plan, and this is the same way we treat, excuse me, we treat all properties that are under a site plan. As of January 1, the value came in at 17,674,800. Once again, in light of, we did our due diligence and we tested to see what the current land rate was for C2 in that area, and it was $71.59 a square foot. We also did our due diligence and tested the income approach, and that came in at 7,744,700. Chris, do you have anything you want to add?
No, thank you all.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And gentlemen, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Sure. Let me, Harold, you can wrap up. Let me just briefly say a couple things. Whether it's January of 2024 or May of 2024, the site plan, whether terminated or not, is worthless. With the grocer backing out of the development, the approvals for the specific development are absolutely worthless. With regard to an income approach, we don't need to get into the nitty gritty of that, but I'd say to do a just straight up income approach like that without considering the renovation cost, the leasing cost, the TI cost, the condition of the improvements, doesn't fully get at what an income value would be. I have a couple other things, but I know we're time sensitive. So Harold, if you want to wrap up a little bit, that'd be great.
Okay, so with all due respect, Ms. Roskin, I would be willing to actually challenge the fact that on January 1, 2024, if anybody had bought that property that day, they would have probably not paid anywhere near the assessment. In fact, if somebody came to me and said for 17.6, you can, I will buy that piece of land, I would have been very, very happy to tell all the owners, hey, let's take this deal. This is a deal of a lifetime. Let's take it. We've been talking with.
So your minute is expired. Thank you. It's just among the board members. Mr. Yates.
So we know that that doesn't have that value. And we've looked, and I know the county's operating guidelines, they take in that date, but we have, in situations where we know what the facts are and what has impacted the value, we considered that. And I think that's what we do.
And where does that lead you?
Mr. Lawson?
It is, it doesn't have value.
Well, I think this is different. Like, for example, let's say you have, you rezone your property to CO and you get a site plan. The property can only be developed in accordance with a site plan or by right, which is like a single family house. I'm exaggerating,
Yeah,
but in CO 1.5, any of those categories, your by right really doesn't exist. In order to spur development along Columbia Pike, they came up with this site plan option. And so you get your site plan approved. However, the C2 remains. And they lost their grocery store, which negated their desire to go site plan. So an owner can go either site plan or ignore the site plan, go C2 zoning. What I did is I took the county's.
Excuse me, is that Columbia Pike specific?
Well, it's also like a couple other places, but mostly Columbia Pike because they're
Not
trying to.
universal, okay.
So what I did is I took the lot area and I took the value that they had on an FAR foot, and C2 gives you a 1.5 FAR, and what I came up with was 8,670,100, because I think that's the value of C2, because they could put in an office building, they could do some retail, they could do up to a 1.5 FAR.
Under current zone.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so that's what I think it's worth.
What's the number again?
8 million.
8,670,100.
Yeah, I'll just throw this out there, just for food for thought, but I don't think it should be lower than 2023. And if you recall, it was improperly assessed in 2023. It should have been probably closer to the 17 million because of the site plan. But it under assessed that year. I wouldn't be comfortable going lower than what.
But 23 was based on what they, that income that it was producing, which is, you can't do that.
Right, I understand that, but it's. I'm not even 100% sold on, that I'm gonna abandon valuation with the site plan.
What was it last year, Mary?
9
9
million.
million.
82,700.
You know, that makes sense. Leave it as it was last year.
I agree. I think they did last year based on the income, not knowing, well, they should have known because the approval was done in February 22. But since they did that last year, and now we know that going forward is now really going to be, you know, to the level that they can use the site plan as they wanted. So I think going to last year for that, for this year, I think I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, the property's producing some income and, you know, the land, we had the land valuation done by the county, so I don't think it's less than the land valuation, it's producing some income, so I'd stay where we are. Where we were last year, 82,000.
I'm stumbling only on the fact that the site plan's the site plan. I wish they had, as soon as they got an agreement with their anchor tenant, that they'd move quickly to get it terminated in 2023, then we wouldn't be here. They wouldn't be here. And, you know, chicken had wings, it would be, you know.
I think they would go through a lot of the legal issues with the various parties to get to the point they need to terminate.
No, I know, but that was in August. They had 4 months to terminate this thing, knowing that it wasn't.
But they might have been. in
We don't
agreement.
have, the only thing is that we lots of times say, well, we don't project, you know, it is what it is. And I'm sympathetic. I'm happy to lower this, but I'm feeling uncomfortable that all we have is the appellant's word that the grocery store disappeared and this disappeared and lawyers took time and whomever took time. And I don't think anybody's falsifying. The only fact that we have is that on 1/1/24, there was a site plan.
I agree.
You know,
That's where I said I'm kind of struggling.
yeah, if you could
Yeah, normally I would feel the same way as you.
overtake me.
Specifically, when we know that there's a site plan and we always say, well, it's still in place.
Yes,
Now we know that it's not anymore.
sure, it's in place.
No, it's not. It's
No.
terminated.
It's
It's
terminated.
terminated.
It's non-existent. That's the part.
April of this year. It's terminated. So that's the
Well,
only.
yesterday we had a thing where literally they said, well, in a couple of days, things are going to change significantly.
Right, but that's a what if.
That's a projection on their part.
Right.
This is a fact.
So 4 months, I'm playing devil's advocate here, I'm not against
Yeah.
it.
And I can appreciate where you're at. I
Yeah.
think they have enough, because I'm.
Fair enough, you want
in
to,
between, so we're.
That's
and it
fine.
meets that.
feel free,
So I
feel
think
free.
we've got enough votes to do what we want to do.
I was focused on the lower number. I think as a compromise in this as a group, the 23 number is within 2 million of where I'd like to be. I'd do it.
Someone like to.
I'll make a motion that we keep the 2023 assessed value at 9,082,000.
I'll second.
Motion second by Mr. Gates, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so it's 4-2 principle, but. Okay, so the assessment is reduced back to the 2023 value of 9,082,700. Thank you.
Thank you, board. Thank you,
Thank you all.
Harold and Matthew.
Hi, Lori.
Thank you, board. Appreciate your work on this. Thank you.
Okay. We have Ms. Shuttlesworth and Mr. Harmon. Okay, next case is RPC 310250001. It's 2400 South Lee. Mr. Harmon, you can start with your 8 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board. Good morning. This is the Allister Arlington Ridge. Now to start, this is the second case in 2 days where the county's NOI is very close to what the property actually reported for income and expenses in the prior year. This is great. This is exactly how we advocate for our clients year after year. This is what state law requires, that the actual income and expenses of the property be used for the assessment. That is the case for this property, so we do not contest the NOI that the assessment has imputed. So that means the issue on appeal is again the cap rate. Now, to start, I want to discuss the burden of proof under Virginia law. The burden of proof prescribed by Virginia law is a preponderance of the evidence. In regards to the cap rate assumed by the assessment, a preponderance of the evidence proves that the county's cap rates are too low. This evidence, there's 2 fair market sales that support an increase of at least 30 basis points and as high as 100 basis points. Industry surveys cited by the county support an increase of between 33 basis points and 60 basis points. And a third method of determining cap rates, band of investment analysis, supports an increase of 63 basis points. What is the support for a 10 basis point increase that the county actually applied? Well, we requested this information from the county, and we were provided 2 surveys, the PwC survey and the RERC survey. So what do these surveys show? PwC shows a year-over-year increase in cap rates of 33 basis points. Of course, 23 basis points higher than the 10 basis points the county applied. The PwC survey shows a range whose lower limit of cap rates for the East region is above the county's cap rates. This means that the county's cap rates are literally so low, they're off the charts. They aren't even within the range of PwC, much less the 33 basis point year-over-year increase. All right, what's the other survey? RERC, surely this supports a 10 basis point increase. No, it does not. RERC shows a year-over-year increase in capitalization rates for multifamily properties of 60 basis points. Well, what about the range for RERC? The RERC range is even higher than the PwC range, which again means the county cap rates are so low, they're literally off the charts. Neither of the surveys that the county states they relied on to develop their cap rates for 2024 capture the county's cap rates. They're off the charts. So all available evidence supports an increase to the cap rates, and literally no evidence supports the county's cap rates. The preponderance of the evidence, and in this case, all of the evidence, supports an increase in cap rates. So the only remaining question is, what should the increase be? Well, the county surveys that were provided as support for their cap rates show, again, these are PwC and RERC. These are not in any way affiliated with Wilkes Artists, our law firm. These are national consulting companies that did these surveys of institutional investors. PwC and RERC both show an increase between 33 basis points and 60 basis points. Market sales in the county support an increase of a minimum of 30 basis points and as high as 100 basis points. These sales, the Jasper sold in July of 2023 for a cap rate that is over 30 basis points higher than the 2023 guideline rate. Now this sale, to give you some context, this was widely marketed. We spoke with the brokers of this sale who were selling the property. This was an arm's length transaction. Over 10,000 teasers were sent out. 250 confidentiality agreements were signed. 20 tours from interested buyers were conducted. And at the end of the day, 15 bids were received. The best bid of those 15 was accepted. That's the sale price, $105 million. So by all accounts, this was a fair market sale, and the sale price is indicative of fair market value under Virginia law. So looking at this fair market sale that occurred in 2023 of a comparable property, we applied the county's cap rate methodology. This is the county's own methodology that's stated in the county guidelines on page 4. This is where we saw the sale cap rate was at least 30 basis points. It was 30.3 basis points above the 2023 cap rate used by the county. The county increased the cap rates by 10 basis points for 2024, which means this sale supports a 20 basis point increase to the 2024 guidelines. Now, this discrepancy in cap rate, that the county's cap rates are too low, is confirmed by the assessments on this sale property. This property sold again for $105 million in July of last year. 2023, the assessment was $13 million above that sale price. 2024, the assessment again is $13 million above that sale price. Now, the other sale is the Crescent Falls Church. This property closed in early 2024 at a cap rate that is over 100 basis points higher than the county's cap rates. Now, we've heard the county's contention that a sale must be on the land records to be considered. Unfortunately, this is just an assertion. This is not supported by either law nor generally accepted appraisal practice. It's, again, simply an unsupported assertion by the county in order to not consider this sale. In fact, the Appraisal Institute states that pending transactions such as this one in 2023 should be considered. The Crescent was pending in 2023. The county was directly called and spoken to by a party to the transaction who gave them the details of this pending sale, and yet it was not considered. So in addition to those two fair market comparable property sales that should be considered, there were multifamily land sales in the county last year that came in lower than the county's guideline rates for multifamily land. So as the multifamily market has cooled, so has multifamily land. All the evidence is pointing in the same direction. So to summarize, the county has provided no support whatsoever to justify a 10 basis point increase. The county's cap rates are so low, they again are literally off the charts of the surveys that the county states they relied on. The preponderance of the evidence, all of the evidence, supports higher cap rates. Now, as a last note, I want to emphasize the distinction between what the market calls cap rates and what the county references as cap rates. So when market participants state a cap rate, it is the equivalent of the county's base cap rate before the tax rate is loaded. Because of the different way the county treats real estate taxes, we have to remember to adjust market cap rates by market participants by adding the tax rate to have an apples to apples comparison with what the county uses in their assessments. So that's the case. The county used actual NOI, which is great. This is how Virginia law dictates assessments of apartments should be created. The burden of proof for this property is the preponderance of evidence, and all of the evidence supports higher cap rates. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shuttlesworth for the county, please.
Yes, hello, everyone. So let me talk about Jasper property. I feel we are going to hear a lot about this year. So during the sales verification of Jasper, we requested a copy of the third-party appraisal, which was not provided. We were actually being questioned as to why we would even need the appraisal. Of course, we will provide supportive documents that are attached to the case once the BOE hearing for Jasper property is scheduled. The circumstances surrounding the sale led us to believe that the seller was very motivated. During the same month they sold Jasper, they entered into a mezzanine loan commitment to fund the multifamily project in North Carolina. It was widely published. Press release was available on CoStar and in several articles that seller strategy is to reduce their portfolio in the Mid-Atlantic region and to start investing in properties with a much more affordable price point, which will give them better growth profile. So far, Avalon Bay Communities sold $445 million in properties. Recently, they shifted to become a net seller of apartments. However, they are still in the market for properties, especially if it helps them bulk up the portfolio in the Sunbelt area. This one sale did not provide enough support, nor it gave us full confidence to increase the cap rates by 30 basis points across the board. We did acknowledge that the Jasper sale price came below the assessment value, and we did make an adjustment on BOE review. We did apply a small 10 basis point increase to our apartment cap rate to recognize changing market conditions. We are continuing to monitor the economic metrics, and we will be revisiting the cap rate again for 2025. Now, in the packet submission, they did contest also stabilized vacancy and OPEX. Based on the 2023 INE provided, the subject GPI increased by over 5% as compared to the 2022. They did report high vacancy and concessions, which was over 9%. Yet still, the EGI increased by over 8%. During the 2024 analysis, we underestimated the apartment income and OPEX. So what we did in our test column F, we increased the apartment rent. However, as the board can see, it is still below the apartment rent the appellants reported. We did that to recognize high vacancies. The 2023 actual rent roll was not provided. JERA did consider the rent information included in the apartment mix information, and I want to note that there were only the lowest ranges of monthly rent fees that were provided to us. We still consider those numbers. We increased our OPEX in our test column from 33% to 38%. As the board can see, the OPEX that was reported by the appellants in the 2023 INE was significantly lower than our OPEX that we used in test column. Our tested NOI was projected to decrease by 4%, and yet still, our tested value was very similar to the property's 2024 assessment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Questions from board members? Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, I think, I did not analyze this as a cap rate case. What I looked at was vacancy. And you have 2020, 7.2, 21, what's that, 8.39, 9.52, and then in the operating year, 8.7. And the county was using the standard 6. So what I did is took the assessment and up the vacancy to the reality. And then the same thing in the test, because the test used 6. And so I think both times I came up with a number lower than what the applicant suggested. So I guess my question is, in fairness, shouldn't the vacancy be upped in your calculation?
Was that to the county, Mr. Lawson?
Yes, I'm sorry. I wasn't clear. I apologize.
Again, per our 2024 guidelines, our stabilized vacancy is 6% across the board for this particular type of property, for mid-rise apartment with the effective age of 1985.
I understand that, but this is not a good location for residential, and I think the vacancy rate demonstrates that. And well, anyhow, I've asked the question.
The actual vacancy rate.
Mr. Matzkin.
For the department, first, whoever knows this off the top of their head, when did the Jasper actually sell? When was the settlement date?
It was July 2023.
Oh, all right. So it was known, it was booked.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay. Quick question for the department and then a follow-up. The RERC and the other survey, now I've forgotten the name of it, that you use, that you depend on, the appellant says the low range is about triple what the amount of basis points you've added on from last year to this. And
Yes.
In your testimony, you said, well, the Jasper wasn't really a quality fair market value element sale, although I just found out that it was right in the middle of the assessment period. So where does the 10 basis points come from? What did you rely on to come up with that?
So we wanted to acknowledge that there were changing market conditions, the decreased investors' confidence in the market. But we only had this very one sales, and we had some questions. We asked some questions. The documentation requested on review of Jasper sale has not been provided to us. And it is widely known, widely published that this particular seller is shifting their portfolio from Mid-Atlantic to Sunbelt area. So we did recognize this sale. We still looked into it as it is the only one sale. We wish we could have more sales, and hopefully we will. But with unanswered questions that we were left with, we just didn't have full confidence to go ahead and increase cap rates 30 basis points across the board. But we still didn't want to be ignorant. And we did give small 10 basis point increase. We are continuing to monitor the market and market metrics, and we will be revisiting cap rates again in 2025. And hopefully we'll have more evidence to support higher adjustments, but at this time, we really didn't have high confidence in the sale. And all my experience, whether on residential or commercial team, what I have observed, appellants do submit copy of third-party appraisals if the appraisal works for them.
I'm just going to interject. There was no
they don't have an
appraisal of
appraisal.
the Jasper prepared for the owner. So Ms. Shuttlesworth, it does not exist.
There's no appraisal. And the county did not request one until May of 2024. An appraisal was not prepared for the owner. Penzance is able to underwrite this on their own. So there's no appraisal that the county sought in May of 2024.
This is a mess.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, hold
Okay,
on. So I'm sorry. I'm going to follow up on Mr. Metzger for the county. So although you requested information from them and you didn't get it, but there is still public record of the sale. So you did know, in fact, what the sale price was.
And we did adjust the based on the BOE review for Jasper property this year. I just wanted to note that we did adjust the value. And
So
it
again-
will be discussed. I believe this case will go to the board.
Okay, no, I'm
this
not talking about their particular assessment. What I'm saying is it was a sale that would affect the cap rate change and all the other properties in the county. And so what I'm hearing is that because you didn't get the information from the seller, you just took notice that, yes, it's sold, but it didn't really factor into.
An outlier.
No, ma'am. May we respond? So again, the request was made in May of this year. The sale was recognized last year in preparation for the January 1st reassessment. As Ms. Shuttleworth has explained, as we explained yesterday, and as I'm sure this will be brought up again throughout the entirety of their agency's representations, we did not hang our entire cap rate analysis on one sale, especially one sale of which was by a motivated seller who was looking to move out of the region. We also noted that they had sold in Tyson's Corner some 6 months earlier. What we've said is that of all these sales that have come out, that there was one mid-rise or high-rise sale in the county. We did not make a change based upon that one sale. We looked at the market entirely. We looked at surveys. There was also made mention of the Crescent sale. The Crescent sale closed on February 15th of 2024. We talked about that yesterday. We do not take letters of intent or proposals or handshake agreements, even if the agency would like us to. We go with ratified closed sales. That sale occurred in February of 2024. The only reliable sale we had was this Jasper Columbia Pike, which we asked for more details this year and did not receive them. But there is correspondence between Annetta and Jordan requesting it and being repeated. Why do we need it?
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Yates.
Ken's question was, why did you decide 10%? You said you recognized that the market has changed, but you really didn't say why you chose 10% versus 15% or 20% or whatever else. You know, obviously the appellant's talking about the studies and where the county is different than the various studies they've looked at and are reporting. But I still don't have an answer. Why did you choose? Is it 10% here out of the air? Because we want to acknowledge something?
10 basis points, sir.
10 basis points. I'm
it's
sorry.
not taken out of the air. It's again upon reflection of our market, Arlington's market specifically.
With one
You
sale.
look at the sales that occurred in the years prior. You look at our surveys that were available to us at the date of valuation, not fourth quarter that keeps being presented by the agency. We're not really relevant to anything in fourth quarter because our properties are valued in October, November. So we do need some time to value these 3,000 commercial properties by 5 appraisers. So upon our analysis, which includes I&E reports, which includes sales, ratified contracted sales in our jurisdiction, as well as looking at periodicals that we've listed, we believe that 10 basis points increase was prudent.
Okay. All right, Mr.
But,
Penrose.
good question for the county. Could you confirm what the effective age is for this? Because on page 2, you have 1975. On page 4, you have 1985.
We have it at 1985. I'm sorry. Just as indicated on the summary sheet.
Okay.
One question.
Or I guess, the appellant, what was the cap rate in the sale of the Jasper NOI versus sales price?
The cap rate using the county's methodology was a 6.043%.
Cap rate was not disclosed. Cap rate was not disclosed.
But he backed into it, so.
This
Okay,
is in the board,
Jordan
this
came
is
up
in
with
the
this
board
cap rate.
book.
Okay.
Okay.
all
Sorry,
right,
Clerk.
I'm done with this.
That's good. Question asked and answered.
Asked and answered. Ms. Shuttlesworth, if you take a minute to wrap up.
Yes, so again, our tested opinion of value is above the appellant's 2023 NOI. We were very conservative with our projected apartment income to recognize the high vacancy at the property. The rental was not provided. Instead, we were given the lowest ranges of the monthly rents being charged. Actually, even based on the lowest ranges of those rents, the potential income is even higher than what was reported on appellant's pro forma for 2024. And yes, we did apply small 10 basis point increase to our apartment cap rate to recognize changing market conditions. We did not want to be ignorant. We are continuing to monitor the economic metrics, and we will revisit those cap rates for year 2025. And with that being said, I ask the board to confirm the 2024 assessment at $53,262,400. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harmon, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yes, thank you. Again, the burden of proof, preponderance of the evidence. What does the evidence show? The Jasper sold July of 2023. The cap rate is 20 basis points above what the county has currently used. That was a good sale, 15 bidders, and the county's contention that it's a motivated seller, that applies to every sale. If you're not a motivated seller, you're not going to sell. So that was a sophisticated transaction between sophisticated parties, both represented, both active in the market. That's a good sale, 20 basis points above current cap rates. The rest of the evidence also supports higher cap rates. The county's own surveys that they state they relied on, PwC and RERC, support a 33 basis point increase and a 60 basis point increase. The current guidelines are so low, they are below the minimum range of both of those surveys. They're off the charts. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. System on the board. You know, one thing I'll agree with Mr. Harmon, and that was a point I was going to make, for the county to say, well, they were motivated. I think in today's market, with interest rates and, you know, bank requirements and whatnot, anybody who's not motivated is not selling property.
So they had a lot of bidders and they took the best one.
Yeah.
That's not like it, they had one buyer. We're gonna hear this cap rate,
Yeah.
this level continually. We gotta make it.
We hear about the Jasper.
Now's the time. We need to pay attention. I mean, I'll just throw this out. I mean, any building that's mid-rise or higher, and the cap that's being built or has just been completed over the last couple of years is residential, it's multifamily, it's not office. And that tells me that until there's a bubble, that contractors, all due respect, contractors tend to build until they lose money, you know, they don't know when to stop, but we're not there yet. And so that suggests that a significant cap rate is not necessary for this kind of product. Having said that, I don't take a lot of credence on one sale in a disparate part of the county, but I do take a lot of credibility to the surveys. Now, of course, that's Mid-Atlantic surveys. It's not even DMV surveys. So I guess I got to come up with, unfortunately, surprisingly to me, that perhaps 10 basis points increase isn't all that necessarily inappropriate. Especially, certainly if we're on the yellow line or in the commercial corridors, I would say that would be totally appropriate. Somebody brought up this isn't a very good location. Sure is another, unless you're a golfer, you got no place to walk to anything from there. So it's a muddle, but we need to handle it, as you said, now, because this is a recurrent spur under our collective saddles.
I'm uncomfortable adjusting the cap rate because I feel like we'd be opening a can of worms. You probably just
And it's one we may need to open.
yeah, potentially. I'm sure we'll hear more about it as we go into the season. The overall assessment is up 4%. I know residential rents are still very strong. The NOI was up much more than 4%, so I would be comfortable just staying where we are.
That's good input. Thank you. Who else? Speak up.
Yeah, well, all right, I'll go ahead and share my thinking. I think the cap rate should be adjusted. But I don't think you even have to go there in this particular case. Because if you take into account a higher vacancy, which seems to be factual rather than, guessed at. I mean, I like last year, I did not lower hardly any residential, but this year it has changed, and it is more difficult to get financing. And this particular project seems to have an unduly high vacancy for whatever reason. So I think the 51,545, I think it's actually lower, but that's what they pledged. So that's where I think the value is.
Yeah, I can tell you what I
Great.
kind of was on the same line, because I'm a little nervous about changing the cap rate from day two.
But we can't, I sure hate to change on the last day.
We need to
Yeah.
talk about, figure out what we're gonna do with that, but in this case, especially because of the vacancy, I mean, I'm with Mr. Lawson on this. If you even increase the vacancy to 9%, caps out at 50,554,000. So that creates a pretty strong argument for the appellant's number of 51,545.
Don't we typically, though, adjust vacancy rates and some others when there's an egregious difference between the appellant and the guideline? And this is 6 versus 9, 50%. Maybe it's egregious. I don't think so.
They got a pretty good,
It's consistent.
they got a pretty good
Consistently.
concession rate too, to get that vacancy. The chief, because the county is looking at that. And I disagree with that.
Say that last part about concessions.
They're running, last year they had over 9% concession rate to get their just under 9% vacancy. That, they're buying the tenants at that point to get the 9%
Very
vacancy.
good stuff. Thank you.
It's not near Metro. It's kind of awkward to get in and out of.
Okay, good stuff, Mark. Thank you. I don't feel as queasy.
I agree with Mr. Mendes. I think that says, I didn't even look into the other numbers. I did look at them, but not making any adjustments because both parties agree that, they're pretty much their NOIs.
NOIs are there.
Really much.
Yeah, that's where I was. Yeah.
And changing the cap rate. That's why I was asking about the effective age, because that would make a difference of another 10 basis points. It's 1985, it's 1985, so I'm okay with it.
Well, you're with him.
Slightly.
I think it may be slightly high too, but I do think we need to address the cap rate, but maybe this is not the case to do it on because the building's, performing. I mean, their numbers in the counties are pretty close to their NOI. Move the number from here to here on that one.
Let's wait for office. Are we 3-3? I guess, where are you?
I think I'm with, I know I'm on this vacancy thing. I was looking for, maybe the trend is that vacancy here is much higher all the time. And that includes a bunch of concessions. Last year I was very queasy about fooling with the cap rate. But this is a good substitute for that. A legitimate, provable, defensible substitute for that.
I can get off the cap rate on this one. We leave the cap rate where it is for this one. The issue, increase the vacancy slightly.
Let's even doing it less because it's actually, I'm saying, I'm willing to accept what they, like it said, accept what they.
Want to make a motion?
I can too. I think we're splitting hairs.
Yeah. Mr. Lawson.
But that's based on the cap rate.
Right, but it's lower than what I tested out.
Right.
Why don't I make a motion that we reduce the assessed?
And I mean. Okay, let him make the motion.
Okay, I make a motion, we reduce the assessed value to $51,545,000 based upon the fact that the vacancy rate has historically been greater than the estimated 6%. And if we do make that adjustment, it would be lower than what the applicant has requested.
Would you say that number again? I'm sorry.
51,545.
Yeah, 51,545, which is their column G.
So that's what they're asking.
What he's saying is, if you adjust the vacancy, it's even lower than that.
You just the vacancy to 9%. We cap out less than this.
Yeah, I did the test and the assessment. It was lower.
Wait a second.
I'll second.
Motion a second by Mr. Menskin, all in favor? Aye, opposed. 42, and then Mr. Mendez. Okay, the assessment is reduced to the appellant's number of 51,545,000 even based on the backup of the test increasing the vacancy to 9%. Make for even 11. Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have Mr. Peralta, Mr. McIntosh? Okay, moving along to the next property, RPC 1700640 at 1549 Clarendon Boulevard. Mr. McIntosh, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. The property is 1560 Wilson Boulevard, which includes multiple parcels. The assessment was decreased from tax year 23 from 37.6 million down to 29.2 million. The property is a Class B office building, 136,170 square feet, built in 1986. The big issue with this property is vacancy and has been for multiple years now. And what the owner has done, and I think on a lot of commercial properties, they have actually leased space in their building. So they've done internal synthetic leases to themselves and I'll go to what the owner said in a letter to me. Dear Keith, you asked for more information about the ongoing vacancy in our Arlington buildings at 1550 and 1560 Wilson Boulevard. In both buildings, you will see the tenants Parallax Partners LLC and Penumbra Partners LLC. Both of these are internal leases, related parties used to facilitate occupancy with more flexible subleasing opportunities. It also improves the cash flow for the property. These spaces remain physically vacant in both of these buildings. So in 1560 Wilson, there is 22,696 of actual vacancy, but the true vacancy is 88,023 square feet, or 65% of the building. This vacancy has been in place since 2021. So what's happening? And, that was their rationale, but the real rationale behind that is what lenders are doing is allowing some of their owners time to try and get improvements in the property and get leases in the properties. And so this was also done, this internal lease is also done to help them not be in default of their lease. Because at certain occupancy levels, they become in default of the lease, and so in default of the loan. So this is part of that rationale as to why they've done this. So if you go to the calendar year 22 income, the actual NOI, not including the internal leases, was 1,410,792. If you go to calendar year 23, the actual NOI is 1,276,939. That's the contract rents plus all other income, less the internal leases. So that column is our last column, and it's the actual income for calendar year 23 is 1,276,939. And if we cap that at the assessor's cap rate of 8.13, we're at about $15.7 million. There are quite a few sales within the DMV at $150 a square foot. And a lot of times these sales are conversions to residential. However, you do have properties that are sort of, in between. You're not there. Next to no new leasing in the buildings, high vacancy, older properties, and maybe not in a position to convert to residential. So we are, so basically that's our indicated value. It's based on actual income. It's based on the stabilized income for the last few years for the property. We don't anticipate any major increases to that income over the next few years, given market conditions and giving the negative absorption in B space. And so that summarizes our position for this property.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Peralta for the county, please.
Thank you and good morning. For this property as well as the next property, is similar arguments that the appellant has put forth. Explained to you the leases in which I guess they synthetically made. I reviewed the leases which they were forthcoming and presenting to me. They look like normal leases to me. The income has been reported in the most recent INE, in the 2023 INE. I believe for this case, it's at a rate of like $43 a square foot for the space. When I look at CoStar, the space is, I believe, listed as sublet space. When I look at the projections of our 2024 valuation, it fails in comparison to the last 4 years of NOI reported in this property. As a matter of fact, we have I guess a delta of about 33% less than was reported in 2023 when you compare the NOIs in the original assessment versus what is reported in the 2023 INE. We did note that this property, because of the vacancy that we included
in the original assessment at 84,433 square feet, did experience a 22% decrease in assessment compared to the overall average in the office sector at 11%. So we feel that, a test wasn't warranted in this case and in the subsequent case that you'll hear. When we compare the NOIs that are being reported. And when we look at the rent roll, everything is supported with the rates that were used in the original assessment. I would argue that this valuation would need to be increased given the new information that we have. But overall, we do support a confirmation in this case. I believe that is all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from board members? Mr. Hanson.
Yeah, this is for the ownership. On the owner, what is it? The owner leasing space from themselves. Is that space actually being used, or is it just empty and you're paying rent?
It's empty. And it's
And you're just
available,
paying rent.
yes, and it's available for lease on CoStar. And as I mentioned, it's aiding in their ability to deal with their lender, to give them time to continue to try and not be in default of the lease and be foreclosed upon.
Okay.
And it's been empty since 20.
Since 21.
Okay, Ms.
You out
Ross?
here, Bobo?
Excuse me?
I believe someone needs to be muted.
Sound like Eileen, yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Peralta, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yes, thank you. I would like to add, since what is reported has been going on since 2021, I'd like to add that this information, unbeknownst to us, the way the owner has operated or synthetically made these leases, has been contributing towards the overall guidelines of the office sector. So we're using this information as reported without that distinction or understanding that was just presented for this year. I don't believe that this position was presented in last year's case, or I'm sorry, the 2022 case. But this is a new position that they've come up with for this particular year. And given that this property has decreased by 22% and the overall NOI is supported and is less than the last 4 years, I believe that this case should be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntosh, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yeah, so again, the actual NOI being generated for this property from market rate income and leases is $1,276,000 versus the NOI used in the assessment of $2.8 million. It's a significant difference. It's been going on for multiple years and is expected to continue. Nothing further.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, it's just among the board.
I don't know what to do with this. I wonder if there's direction from other cases or from appraisers or something like that.
It's 35% occupied. If you took what is, I'm understanding to be the real numbers, is what the appellant has, but no bottom below the line. And I think that's what's missing. I just.
It's
It's
an owner who's contributing to the income flow.
Right.
And is that different than an owner fixing it up? In other words, it is money coming in and they're saying, well, don't count it
Or is
because
it
of the
offsetting?
unique situation.
Or is it simply an offset on the books of what he might be getting out of that building? So it's
Yeah.
not really coming in.
Yeah.
He's not shelling it out.
Yeah, this may be above my pay grade. Yeah, how exactly do we consider this or not consider it? yes, as rent.
I'm surprised the lender's letting this go on and knowing it.
Well, I guess they're making, the lenders don't want it.
Yeah, lenders aren't in the real estate business. Um, You have other properties over there who are occupied. Don't pay rent.
Yeah.
There's the space and we assess based on
As
the
if they,
square footage as if it was rented to someone else. So I think the logic of how the county is doing gross potential is correct, is a loose word, but equalized.
that's what I'm saying, that really we're looking at what the potential is with below the line.
Right.
Yeah,
And the fact that they're not.
it'd have been nice, I guess, that, this is retrospect, but if, the owner could have maybe brought, how has another jurisdiction dealt with it, or how would an appraisal handle it? Because I really don't know.
That's a good,
Yeah.
I come up with you say whether they're actually using the space. We see it all the time, management, building management. and they pay.
Storage.
And if somebody wanted it, they'd move, they'd go somewhere. They're very flexible to get a live external tenant. This is still the same. The landlord's, one pocket of the landlord is paying another pocket. It happens.
Yeah.
It's certainly legitimate. And I'm obviously sympathetic because this is up the hill. Nobody wants to be there so much. And it's a nice, I can't deviate from what the county's come up with. The money's the money.
No, I'm okay with what the county did. As a matter of fact, I agree with Mr. Tralta that we were to adjust to do a test based on the rates that they reported. I think we'll come up with at least 70 million value. I'm okay with the assessment.
I'd stay with the county.
Sure, I'll go ahead and move that we confirm the assessment of 29,281,900.
Second by Mr. Mendez, all in favor? Aye, opposed, okay, it's unanimous. The county's confirmed that the 29,281,900. Thank you. Moving to the next property, RPC 1700050 at 1550 Wilson Boulevard. Mr. McIntosh, you can start your 8 minutes.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Again, this is the same owner. It is a, sorry, let me get my notes here. Class B office building, 141,000 square feet in that rentable area, built in 1984 in average condition. Exact same issues here with this building as well. Excessive vacancy in the property, not being accounted for in the assessor's worksheet. The assessor has indicated that they see that the space is available for lease on CoStar. And so we know for a fact that the properties are vacant, and the vacancy is actual. The internal analysis done, I think, on the valuation side, synthetic leases are done, all the time for multiple reasons. But we must, look at, from a valuation standpoint, what would, an owner as of the date of value, what would they be purchasing as of the date of value when that ownership goes away with their internal lease? They would be purchasing what's actually in place. And so this is the same argument as the last case. The actual, you can see historically in calendar year 21, the NOI was 1.8 million. The actual NOI in 22 was 768,000. It was back up in 23, calendar year 23. The actual end of 1,796,000, so pretty close to what it was in 21. And again, the capitalizing that NOI at the assessor's cap rate that was used on the last case of 8.13 brings us to $22 million. I mean, the assessment's headed in the right direction. The prior year assessment was 42.9 million. It decreased in 24 to 29 million. But again, this is an issue of vacancy. And the income being reported is synthetic income. And that summarizes our position.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Peralta, Cook County, please.
Thank you. Similar to the last case, this property experienced an even greater decrease in assessment, about 31% from last year's assessment. When looking at the actual vacancy, we do note that we had a higher amount of vacancy reported and used in the 2024 assessment. If you see how it compares to the actual, we're almost 60,000 more in square feet vacant compared to what they reported in 2023. If you just compare the two columns into column D and column E. Again, the NOI is glaring as far as within the last 2 years as compared to the last 4 years in the last case. It is significantly less than what is reported. My numbers turned out to be 33% less than what was reported in 2024. The appellant's number in column G for NOI is about 70% less than what was reported in the 2023 INE. So we feel there's a, kind of an extreme difference in the numbers there, in the three numbers in columns D, E, and G, and we asked the board to confirm this case. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Questions on board? Mr. Metzger.
It's for the department, I guess. No, for the appellant. There's 3 addresses, one on Clarendon Boulevard, 2 on Wilson Boulevard. And I mean, I've been in these buildings. Are they somehow connected? You seem to be mixing and matching the synthetic leases in this building, that building, and you look at the write-up on both pages 2 for what's of these 2 cases. All the synthetic leases are the same, everything's the same, but the vacancies are different. I'm sorry, but just the geography. Are these synthetic leases that you mentioned? I'm trying to get a cogent question, but I'm so at sea that I'm struggling. The synthetic leases, let's start there. This is for Mr. McIntosh. In both of these cases, the sizes and therefore the dollars being paid from one part of the landlord to the other are the same. Are they spread out differently among these 3 different business addresses, or is there only 2 buildings we're talking about? Help.
So these are 2 separate buildings. The master leases that are being done, this owner actually has about 30 buildings in the region, and he's doing it in all 30 buildings where there is significant long-term vacancy in the properties. And they're doing the leases based on the rents that are, that they would be putting out to the market for a market rate lease. So it's a master lease. It's the same Parallax partners and Penumbra partners across all 30 assets in the region.
That's begging question. Let's go. First of all, are we talking about 2 side-by-side buildings, 50/50
Yes.
and 1560 Wilson?
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
Clarendon Boulevard address,
Yeah,
that backs up to it. That just doesn't have anything to do with anything. Is that right?
that's correct.
Okay, great. Now, on these 2 cases, the amount of the synthetic leases that you call are exactly the same. Are they spread out over the 2 buildings, or are they exactly the same amount of synthetic leases in each building? 58,000 square feet plus or minus for Penumbra.
They may not even have space.
No, they set it aside, they're paying on it, and they're not occupying it. But the numbers are exactly the same for both building, or
What do you mean, the numbers for the amount of the spaces that are
that are being
leased?
leased, that you call synthetic leases, which we
Yeah.
understand and buy. But in the department's write-up, page 2 of both cases, they're exactly the same amount of square footages. In both cases, both those two partners. Maybe that's a department wrote this up, maybe this is your question to answer.
Well, that was just part of the appellant's supporting documents.
Okay, so you just copied it over, so we gotta go back.
Correct. Yep.
Because what I'm finding is the synthetic leases. I'll just stop there.
Yeah, I guess for the owner again, what are other jurisdictions doing with this? Or have you had that experience yet?
Well, we have been waiting on our decisions actually in DC and in Maryland on the issue. DC's taken the position, hey, they're reported on the lease, on the rent roll, and and we're taking them as whatever's reported on the rent roll, based on what the assessors have said to me in the hearing. So I don't, we don't have a decision yet.
Okay.
In both of those, in both Maryland and in DC.
Mr. Mendez?
For the county, I noticed in this case, there was a cap rate that was 10 basis points higher than the last case and the appellant's cap rate. Just wondering why it was 8.23 this time instead of 8.13.
Yeah, it was, the effective age of the properties are slightly different. And that's why we were using a different cap rate. Their cap rate that they want us to use is actually lower, so it would increase the value.
Okay, nothing else? Okay, Mr. Crawford?
This is, I know.
Yes, thank you. Just would like to note that what I spoke to earlier about the other case, but in this case, just the parallels or the comparisons of the leases in place, the rental average for office due to the rent roll or analyzing the rent roll is $1 more in office, and then an additional, I believe, $8.60 more in the retail. So if we were to adjust that and make the changes as necessary, I believe would still come up to the same valuation. Just to give the board a little more, I guess, factual information to kind of digest rather than, up in the air as far as what to actually do in this certain circumstance. But we do ask that the board confirm this case based on the NOIs that are given and the rent roll that was received. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntosh, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yeah, just finally, the vacancies, the actual market vacancy. What you have is a synthetic vacancy being reported. That's the issue. The buildings aren't generating the revenue. They're about $1 million less than what is suggested by the county's analysis in each case. But we're working on issues to try and alleviate what's happening in the market, and feel like a little bit being penalized for trying to manage the situation. But that's all.
Thank you. All right, it's just among the board.
I think it's the same as last case.
But they're faced with paying 25% higher in taxes or default on their loans, technical default on their loans. And they've chose to pay a little more taxes by creating these leases. They're on the books.
I wonder if they could pay the lender directly or do something different, come up with a different scenario, but I think we don't really have a choice. I mean, I'm sympathetic as heck.
I
I really am.
And this is market.
But yeah, my calculation's about a little under $3 million difference.
And they're doing this on 30 properties.
Yeah.
Well,
He said they
we have
have,
30.
right,
Doesn't mean this is-
he said that I thought I heard a statement. that he's
Yeah, he
doing it
did.
across the.
He said they're doing this with every property because of the lenders or lender.
Right, well, no further discussion, then I'm gonna move to confirm county. Second by Mr. Conrado, all in favor? Opposed? County's confirmed at 29,773,100. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take this back on there, okay? Next case, C 17032-008. 100 Arlington Boulevard. Mr. McIntosh, you can start with your 8 minutes on this.
Sure, thank you. The subject property is a apartment building built originally in 1950. Renovations started in 2021. We have 261 units. As of 1/1/24, there are still 18 units vacant, which works out to be about 7% vacancy. The owners continue to offer concessions in order to lease up. As of today, that vacancy is still in place, so that seems somewhat stabilized there. The main issue that we have on the valuation is the capital expenditures that are being put into the property and that continue to be needed. So for this year, in 2023, the owners spent $2.1 million in capital. And in the year prior to that, there was about $4 million in capital spent. Again, this is a much older property. And what's left to be spent is $5.8 million. So our NOIs are fairly similar. We're using the same cap rate at 5.8. And we're arriving at 58.9 million based on our inclusion of some of the concessions that are needed to lease up the property, which the assessor does not include. And we also take a deduction on what's left to be spent on the capital in order to maintain these rents and bring the building up to up to date in terms of capital. And the things that are needed, the windows need to be replaced. There's tier replacement, drain tier replacements that are needed. And quite a few others are detailed in the summary of the capital items that are needed. And so we take a deduction off of that as of the date of value that any investor buying this property would anticipate having to spend this money to maintain the value that's being proposed. That summarizes our position.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cheekas for the county, please.
Yes, ma'am. Again, the board is familiar with how I present my cases. We rely fairly heavily upon the summary sheet. In looking at the summary sheet, it was fairly well summarized by Mr. McIntosh. This was a property that was previously a hospitality. Interesting enough, it started life as an apartment, went to hospitality, and is back to multifamily. So during years 2020, 2021, they were undergoing quite a bit of renovations and owner expense at that time. They did open doors 2022. As you can see, the history quickly stabilized from 51% vacancy in 2022 down to approximately 10.5 in 2023. And as we agree with Mr. McIntosh, it was stabilized at 7% as of January 1. Didn't have much to go on as far as a history of the property in regards to our projections made for January 1 fair market value. So we did look to see the recently received 2023 INE. Of course, as you can see with your own eyes, column E and F, we were made some over projections on gross potential income, and of course, subsequently to effective gross. You can see in our test, we did try to bring that back down to reality as far as what was being achieved this past year. But we'll also note that we were almost 26% or some $600,000 high on operating expenses. The board has seen this before where we make an adjustment to one column, or I should say, one component of our column. We obviously look at the entire thing. We did test operating expenses that are more in line with what's being achieved at the property. You can see in column G that we tested expenses to increase by over 5%, and yet still wanted to get more reasonable projection for effective gross. After last year's growth of 135%, we projected 3.5%. And again, that's half of what is projected by the appellants themselves. We just happen to disagree on the operating expense projection. Obviously, we don't believe that there's going to be a 22% jump from last year's report at 40.4% of effective gross. In regards to some of the things that were mentioned with the capital expenditures, again, the board is familiar with that. We do contend that those are owner expenses. The point of capital expenditures is to either add life to the property or expect a return on investment as far as amenities that are provided. As Mr. McIntosh reported, the owner reported some 2.1 million or so in CapEx for the year, but correctly left that off of the expense stream. In regards to the 5.8 million, we would note, and the board is welcome to turn to page 112 of the, I believe it's 112 of 175. It details out, looks like a 5 or 6 year capital expenditure improvement plan, if you will. So that 5.8 is actually going through year 2028. We're an annual assessment. Obviously, we would not, if we were to consider these owner capital expenditures, which we do not, it wouldn't be something we would give credence to 5 years out. As noted by the appellant, these are things that are very typical of, as far as capital expenditures: window replacements for all units, penthouse renovation, roof replacement, etc. Again, we do believe that based upon the income stream, income approach to value, you can see that the county tested the information to try to account for the over projection on effective gross. But again, please note that we're also some 600,000 high as far as our over projections on operating expense. Based upon our test, based upon 5.8 million and capital planning initiatives that have yet to be incurred and wouldn't be recognized by the county anyways. We do believe that the county should be confirmed at a value of 60,535,700. Thank you.
Thank you both. Questions from board members?
I have one just for the department. From time to time, we see multifamily projects that have been or in process or have been already significantly updated. One comes to mind, I think it's Dolly Madison, right adjacent to Army Navy Country Club, where over time you take off money below the line or something because of significant capital input. Could you frame that more specifically for me, please?
Sure. That was a Arlington County Board initiative that was a program where property owners could apply for partial tax exemptions for substantially renovated projects. And what they had to do was increase the improvement value by over 20% without adjusting their floor plan or footprint, I should say, by that same amount. So in other words, it was an initiative by the county board to rehabilitate and renovate certain properties for the benefit of tenancy, if you will, but then would reward those property owners with a partial tax exemption for a 15-year period, 11 years of which would be 100%, and then would burn off at 20% a year until it came back to zero.
Thank you. And this appellant, did it meet the 20% test? And
the program itself is actually suspended by the county board some years ago. So there are a certain number of properties that are grandfathered in, and we will recognize the partial exemptions, but otherwise,
yeah, ongoing. Okay, thanks a lot.
Yes, sir.
No other, okay, Mr. Chicas, if you take a minute to wrap up then.
Yes, ma'am. So again, relying primarily upon the income history, we see that the county made over projections on gross income and effective gross, but also wildly over projected operating expense. You can see we used the rent roll that was provided for our test projection. And even when reducing the gross potential and effective gross, it still indicated a value increase over the January 1. We do believe that the county should be confirmed at 60,535,700. Thank you.
Mr. McIntosh, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yeah, nothing further.
All right, thank you both. All right, it's just among the board. Don't have a problem with the assessment. I think, to be honest, for the projection and then to see what actually it performed at, they did a pretty good job coming up with that. And why the numbers were a little askew from the standpoint of being higher on different things, but
I'm good with the county.
Yeah, and this is still leasing up a bit. I mean, I was just looking at the vacancy rate in the same framework that we did in the last case. But this isn't stabilized. I mean, this is over the guidelines, but this isn't stabilized like the other one, so it's not appropriate to abandon the guidelines.
Second. Mr. Gates, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. It's unanimous. County's confirmed at 60,535,700. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McIntosh.
We have Mr. Chikas. Do we have Kristen Acreage? Shaquille.
Madam Chairwoman, may I speak?
Sure.
I received notice from Kristen yesterday afternoon via email 346. Quote unquote, we have gone back through the documents and have chosen not to move forward with contesting the assessment, so we will not be on the call tomorrow. Thanks again for your help throughout the process. Best, Kristen.
Okay.
At this point, yeah.
Okay. All right. We just need to vote on a withdrawal. So what time was that last night? I'm sorry.
That came in 3:46 yesterday afternoon.
We have a longer time period for withdrawals.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
Don't we have?
We vote to accept them. So I just want, I need something for the minutes.
I'm flying the ointment. Good.
Hold on. Yeah. All right. So all that being said, then I'm gonna move to accept the withdrawal that was sent in at 3:46 yesterday by the appellant. Second.
We're asking to withdraw, or they're saying they will.
Yeah.
No, that they're not opposing.
Chris said they withdrew it.
Okay.
So a second. Mendez, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, okay, so that is unanimous. Withdrawn is accepted. Okay, that completes the agenda. Does anybody have any other business?
I might be off next week. Kids are getting out of school and might take them somewhere.
All right, can you just send me an email?
I'll let you know for
Yeah.
sure once I know.
Or even that you're ending it, but okay.
Yeah.
All right, then we will stand convened here at 10:43, reconvene next Tuesday morning. It's the 18th at 9 a.m. It's virtual for the board members.
Virtual.
Virtual for everybody.
You don't want to miss the virtual. It's some other day.
That's the whole summer, except for like the next 2 weeks.
It works out perfect because
Thank you.
Thank you, board members. Thank you, Rosa.